Hello everyone, I'm Kristen Last, the Town Manager with the Town of Westford. I'm here joined by Superintendent Christopher Chu and Select Board Vice Chair Scott Hazelton. We would like to give the town an update of where we are related to the fiscal 25 budget for the town and schools, and also provide more information that we have developed over the course of time since the Budget Task Force videos were presented. This past Monday, we had an open forum for the fiscal 25 budget over at Millennium School, and it was extremely well attended by people on Zoom and via people in person. So leading up to the March 23rd town meeting, we really wanted to get together and have a short conversation and a short update for residents of how we've come along since the budget was originally presented in December from the school committee and the select board, and what we will be asking town members to vote on March 23rd. So thank you. Is there anything either of you want to start off by saying?
Well, one of the things I would say is I would encourage people to watch the recording from that open forum that we had Monday night, because there were some fantastic questions. Some questions that we've heard on the other road shows that we've had, but there were a lot of new questions that came up, and I thought it generated some good discussion that I think will be helpful for people to understand.
Great. Well, just to give people a quick overview of where we are related to the fiscal 25 budget, myself and Dr. Chu presented to our respective board and committees in early December with two budgets. Both the select board and the school committee had asked us to prepare a budget that did not require an override, that was severely cutting our level services, and then a budget that would require a Proposition 2.5 override that would allow us to continue our level services with no increases to staff or services at that point in time. We went through a series of budget meetings with our respective committees and the Finance Committee, and we really heard a lot of positive feedback from the Finance Committee on things that we could adjust a little bit differently. And after those 4 meetings from January and February, the Select Board then did ask for us to further cut the override projected budget by $1.1 million. And at that point in time, we did so. And the Select Board, Scott, you were at those meetings, certainly have reviewed a lot of the numbers and had some thoughts and comments related to that.
Yeah, certainly. And thanks to both town and school side for looking at those cuts, and thanks to FinCom, because as we sort of walked through that, department by department, asking very careful questions on really even small numbers, it became clear we could. There's clearly some cost to these cuts, but they can be made without a drastic impact. But the alternative is to have no override, which would be a far worse outcome. And I would encourage you to sort of watch these meetings as we've evolved through this process of getting an override that we think, certainly it's a painful, even with the override, but it balances the taxpayer needs with town needs. And I would just observe that of this roughly $10 million deficit, about $4 million of that is because of labor contracts, and $6 million though is like non-labor contracts, things like health insurance, bus pickup, trash fees, it's for trash disposal cost. And so it's not a case of employees being the problem. It's a case of inflation being the problem. Inflation running at 2.5%. It's not an accident that Prop 2.5 is Prop 2.5. That's your long run inflation rate, and we're of course exceeding that now with even now it's at 3, but you've had the number 6, 8 in the past. So we're paying for that inflation in our town budgets, just as you are with your household budgets. So as we're trying to get that balance of cuts and revenue increases to make that work for the town as best we can and for taxpayers as best we can.
Great. So ultimately, the Select Board reviewed a number of scenarios related to no override versus overrides. We started at an $8 million potential override that we feel would get us through our budget challenges for about 3 years. We looked at a step-in approach. We looked at a $6 million override. I believe the board thought that the $6 million override would severely cut services for both town and schools. And at their last meeting in February, the Select Board voted to implement a question question for the town meeting and on the ballot for a $6.8 million override that we believe would service us for over the course of the next 3 years, understanding that town and schools also are going to have to reduce their budgets over that point in time. And there will be further cuts unless we come into much lower inflation or a higher revenue stream with either MBTA communities or another revenue source that we have not predicted at this point in time.
And that's something that I think is important for people to understand, that where we've landed is really in this compromise position where we know that for the next couple of years, if an override passes, we will still be making efficiencies, we will still be making reductions in our budgets in order to meet that gap. That the override request is helping us to come closer to our needs, but we still are already committed to making those reductions over the next couple of years and or identifying different efficiencies so that we can go into FY28 in a stronger position, is what the overall plan looks like. But as you'd said earlier, we have two scenarios. We have what will happen if we pass an override, and what will happen if we need to remain within the constraints of Proposition 2.5. And so those two scenarios are things that I think it's important for people to look at both of those so that they understand the information that's being presented.
Absolutely, and we have updated our budget website off of the town's homepage that lists all of the budget documents. We have a number of frequently asked questions that addresses some of the things that you talked about. We're certainly building off of the budget task force, and we're doing a lot of outreach leading up to town meeting as well. It's obviously not just Westford that's in this predicament or situation. I know that our neighbors Groton and Dunstable are going to town meeting in late March and the ballot early April. I think the town of Acton is contemplating this as well. The town of Arlington already voted on an override in November for their fiscal 25 budget. So many people may say, I don't understand why Westford is doing this, but as Scott explained earlier, that we are all in this budgetary challenge right now due to the inflationary levels and due to state aid being much lower than we believe may be the case.
Yes, state aid has increased at about a compound rate of 1% per year. That doesn't cut it, even when it inflates at 2.5. And your other, the other town source of revenue can be growth. So the 2.5 number applies to your existing tax base. If you can increase that tax base through additional growth, that gives you or gives us budget room to work with. And we've had a very slow growth rate, as in fact everyone has, because of a bad housing market and a tough office market. But as we look at what's happening with MBTA communities, where's the growth coming from? The future of multifamily housing, mixed-use development. And so, if that were to pass at town meeting, we know there are developers who are looking to come here and participate in that process, which means that come 2027, FY 2027, we expect that we've got some growth coming in to give us some relief from the constraints of 2.5.
Right, so I think a lot of residents will say, oh my goodness, what does this mean for me, right? So we would really encourage them to review all of the documents that town and schools have put out there. We outline all of the reductions that would be required for both an override and non-override scenario for fiscal 25, but we also detail that out through fiscal 26 and 27 so people can see those impacts. They may also want to know, how is this going to impact my tax rate if I do vote for the override or if I don't vote for the override? And we prepared a nice calculator for people to use on our budget webpage. So we'd really encourage people to do that. And then we hear from a lot of people who say, I just cannot afford this, I just cannot do this. We really want to encourage people that there is availability out there through the assessor's department and state and local programs for exemptions. And we outline those exemptions on our webpage. The assessor's office and the Council on Aging has a great number of resources and are very helpful for our residents. We know that our residents are not taking full advantage of those exemptions. So we want to be really clear that we are available. Do not feel embarrassed to come talk to us. We want people to use these programs and want our residents to thrive in the town of Westford. So with that, I will just remind people that we have town meeting coming up on March 23rd at 9 a.m. at the Westford Academy Gymnasium. We have also off-site satellite parking available if there's overflow required from Kristen Foley. We'll be busing people back and forth. Registration starts at 8 a.m. for that 9 a.m. town meeting. The budget conversations will be the first item on the agenda. We also offer free transportation to and from people's homes if they wish to do that. There's a registration through the Council on Aging or on the website. We have free childcare throughout the day for people who want to bring their children with them and want them to have a great fun experience with our recreation department. There's also a sign up for that. And we've also made a lot of enhancements for our town meeting to accommodate this large crowd. We have additional clickers, 800 clickers. We have seamless AV equipment throughout the gymnasium and the PAC that we've tested and is really going to work out quite well. We'll be serving a pizza lunch in the cafeteria for people to purchase lunch or they can bring their own lunch, and really want to make people feel as comfortable as possible coming to the town meeting on March 23rd. And then there will definitely be a ballot question on the local election on May 7th. That'll be at your normal voting precincts that day. So before we close out, Scott or Chris, do you have anything else you'd like to add to the conversation?
Just on the town meeting, we've also arranged for a separate room for non-residents. So, whereas past town meetings it's been hard to tell one from the other, that will be the case. Also, the clickers are different colors. So if you're in the gymnasium versus the Performing Arts Center, you'll have different clickers, so we can tell who was assigned where. No chance of mixing it up. So all the lessons that we learned from the special town meeting in October have been applied to make this much more seamless and hopefully enjoyable for the voters.
And I would just like to say that we have had a number of meetings throughout the year, both select board meetings and school committee meetings, and the finance committee hearings where this budget has been discussed quite a bit. And so I would just encourage everybody to look at the information that we have on both the town and the school websites so that you can have the most accurate information as to what is being presented. A lot of times people will hear things and it might not be the full picture, it might not be everything that they've heard from somebody else. So I would also encourage you, if you have a question, to reach out to Kristen or myself. Both of our emails are both posted on our website, so that you could reach out to us if you had any specific questions.
I'll vote to the select board as well. Our emails are out there on the town website, so when you run for office, you expect to get comments. So happy to respond. And as Chris says, I've had people come to me and say, I've heard. Sometimes they've heard correctly, sometimes not. So if you have a concern, by all means, reach out to your elected official or town staff and get the facts. And that'll be helpful for everybody.
Great. So thank you so much for watching this show. Again, please feel free to reach out with any questions, and thank you to Chris and Scott for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks.